Thank you all. I follow the instruction of the organizer of the conference. Provocative question or synthetic connection from the discussion that will open up the floor for conversation. So I would have some synthetic connection and one or two provocative questions. The synthetic connection will be this observation on the speaker. Mr. Bill Hayton, the first speaker, right?
No, it's me.
No, it's down on the program first.
In the abstract.
Yeah, I follow the program, so I get mixed up. He said something about the Chinese create a lot of myth with the elite, either government or scholarly elite, and they don't have the already existing claim, but they invent the claim with those scholar, government or scholarly, to create myth about Chinese right in the South China Sea. And I would favor his interpretation as correct. But then I mentioned Dr. Viet, objection to his remark too. In 1898, the Canton province chief, on the occasion of a shipwreck, say to the French authority that wants his judgment on the case, he said that our empire stopped at Hainan. Overseas there, we don't tinker with. So let the ship owner come to Haiphong, Vietnam, to ask the official there settle the matter. So it's obviously the Chinese under the Qing dynasty deny any jurisdiction over beyond Hainan. Same with the map given by Merkel to Xi Jinping. So Mr. Hayton is right, but he may be wrong in the sense that he said the Vietnamese have some people on the Amphitrite island, or the Chinese had that, and Mr. Viet object to the observation. He said that the Woody Island is the only one the Vietnamese has. The rest is not, and not in the Vietnamese authority. Then he mentioned some Japanese company, and I have this fact. The Japanese company Mitsui Bussan Kaisha told the French that they respect the French authority in the Amphitrite area and the Woody area. So, and in 1920, they also sent a scientific mission there. 1938, they protest when the Chinese, they established a meteorology station. Then in 1946, they protest Republic of China on that area. So Mr. Viet may not be aware of these things, that there are the French authority being recognized by the Japanese company. And Mr. Hayton may be right in saying that Chinese create a lot of myths. Another people, Mr. Chung, discussed about the matter. I already mentioned my reaction, so I wouldn't talk about it again. Mr. Sun mentioned a lot of historical facts that I'm glad I don't have to repeat in my talk tomorrow, because even the judge in the courtroom used to ask the testimony that just the facts, ma'am, because the facts decide the issue. But the facts have been presented by Mr. Chandukang Sir. Tomorrow I don't have to talk too much about the facts. I will talk about the law. So those are the things I would like to say. that the syntactic connection is Chinese create a lot of myths. And there is the question that I would like to put that is the Chinese rely on study by Hung Chiu and Park Chung-hee, Chun-ho Park, is that right? And those are the Chinese and the Korean that are pro-Chinese. Chun-ho Park sit next to me at Harvard Law School office, and I am the one who is provoked by him to begin investigating South China Sea. And I read his papers very carefully. So I agree with Mr. Hayton that these are the guys who pro-Chinese. And because of that, the myth creation of the Chinese need to be debunked by scholars in conference like this. And I hope that this is a question before us, for all Southeast Asian, not only Vietnamese or US. Thank you.
What I'm going to do is kind of step back and speak a little more conceptually about the idea of sovereignty, and to think about what I call a historical approach to sovereignty. And I think this is something that all four of the papers on this panel do really well. I'm a historian, and I think that in recent years there have been a lot of scholars who have become interested in sovereignty and in trying to use history to think about sovereignty in a way that's different, perhaps, from the way that political scientists and lawyers and philosophers have traditionally thought about it. I want to start by referencing a European historian by the name of James Sheehan. Sheehan has pointed out that there's always a gap between the theory of sovereignty and the actual historical practice of sovereignty. In theory, Sheehan points out, sovereignty is always what he calls a chunk. It's sort of an all or nothing thing. Either you have it or you don't, or at least you're trying to get it. In practice, however, when you actually look at sovereignty and how sovereignty is constituted, or how states attempt to constitute or wield sovereignty, sovereignty isn't a chunk. He uses another metaphor. He describes it as a basket, and specifically as a basket of claims about authority or rights over territory, over people, over institutions, or over material resources. The advantage of this approach, according to Sheehan, is that this way of thinking about sovereignty as a basket of claims, I think it opens up a more historical and a more contingent approach to the study of sovereignty. Sovereignty is something that's constructed, but it's also something that's practiced. So we have to kind of get into the historical details, and I think all of the papers do this quite well. In the case of what I should say about the claims, about these sovereign claims, these claims can be administrative or military in nature, and that tends to be the thing we think about when we think about sovereignty. We look for claims that states are making to administer particular territories or to administer particular groups of people. And we look at military forces and the exercise of military power, the deployment of military forces. And certainly that's important in the history of sovereignty. But we also have to look at economic claims, scientific claims, technological claims, claims relating to transportation, the rights to move through or across certain areas, the rights to trade. These are also very important elements that are constitutive of sovereignty. And I think all of the papers in their own way actually bring this up. We have mention of the French scientific operations in the South China Sea. Bill suggests that that's actually how the French first became interested in making sovereign claims over the South China Sea. We have discussion of various economic activities, everything from collecting birds' nests to bird shit, I guess. And so, and then of course, I think in Chris's paper, part of the purpose for the maps, as I understood it, is to delineate certain trade routes or certain transportation routes, that this is part of the activity of the construction of the 9-dash line. And I think it's really important for us to pay attention to this when we think about the South China Sea and we think about the history of these sovereign claims that different states have put forward. I would also argue that a historic approach can provide a very useful counterpoint to the claims that are being put forward by governments and by nationalist historians today, because those governments and historians are almost always framing sovereignty in that chunk-like form, rather than thinking about it as a basket of claims. I just wanted to raise sort of a couple of questions. The first one has to do with Tong Chai's idea of the geobody, which both Bill and Chris raised. And this is, I think, Tong Chai's book, of course, was a very important book in the study of nationalism and in the study of cartography. And I think there's some very interesting concepts that we might be able to borrow and apply here. I do wonder, though, if there are differences between maritime geobodies and landed geobodies, and if we might think about that, about the differences in the ways in which sovereign claims are advanced and asserted on sea or in maritime areas as opposed to landed areas, and what the implications of that might be for understanding the history of claims about the South China Sea. The other question I'll ask is for Enrico here about the Spitsbergen approach, which is really fascinating. I share Michelle's appreciation for you bringing this up. There, I think the question is, do we have to think about the particular circumstances in Europe after World War II that gave rise to this, that enabled this? And if we are going to put this forward as a model for the South China Sea, what are the particular conditions that would have to obtain in the South China Sea, or which states and diplomats might have to work to achieve in order to implement it? So the first question, which I think has perhaps already been alluded to, is who is Norway in the South China Sea? Presumably, we're not going to sign sovereignty of the parasols over to the actual country of Norway. So who exactly is going to play that role? I think I'll just leave my comments there. As I said, I really enjoyed listening to these papers and hearing about this. I think all of you are doing really important work, and I really do think that the history of the South China Sea is going to be very integral to thinking about it going forward and hopefully finding some kind of solution that will allow us to reduce tensions in the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.